Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Man in America. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse, and it is lovely to be live with you this wonderful evening. And boy, do we have a show ahead of us tonight. And honestly, this show is going to be a very heartfelt show. We're going to be diving into the big picture of what's happening in America. I mean, to the best that I can assess it. Just the reality of what's going on in America, a movement, an awakening that transcends politics, it transcends race, religion. It's so much bigger than that. And honestly, it's extremely encouraging for me, and I hope it is for you as well. So it's going to be a great show with a lot of hope. Not to say there's not some bad things that might be coming up in our future and a lot of chaos, but fundamentally, I do have hope. So before we jump into the show, just a few quick things. First off, if you're watching on Rumble, thank you for supporting free speech. And I encourage you to make sure you hit that green follow button. Rumble is the main place that I'm making sure I'm publishing. It's between Rumble and Twitter. That's where I feel the safest. I feel like I'm not going to be censored. And for all you that are still watching on YouTube, naughty, please come watch on Rumble and stop supporting the beast system. The other thing is I have a question for you. Folks, are your savings safe? So with every passing day, the value of the dollar erodes, weakened by overprinting and rampant inflation. And now, as the BRICS nations accelerate their de-dollarization plan to collapse the dollar, the risk only grows. Imagine waking up one morning to find your hard-earned savings worth only a fraction of what they were, and it's happening faster than you think. But you have a choice. A simple shift, one decision, can protect your wealth from the collapse. Moving even a small portion of your savings into gold and silver could be the key to securing your future. Gold and silver have stood the test of time. They're not just metals, they're safe havens, impervious to the whims of inflation and economic turmoil. So while the dollar loses value, gold and silver are standing strong. And the time to act is now. Before the dollar weakens further, safeguard your savings with noble gold. Folks, imagine the peace of mind knowing that your wealth is protected, that you're going to have assets to pass on to your children. It's simple, it's safe, and it's something you can do today. So move your savings from the vulnerable IRA and 401ks into the enduring strength of gold and silver, because when the dollar fails, you're going to be glad that you did, and there's no better company to work with than Noble Gold. So folks, protect your future. Act now. Call 626-654-1906 or visit goldwithseth.com to get your free gold and silver investment guide. Again, that's 626-654-1906. All right, so folks, as I mentioned, we're going to be looking at just a bigger picture of what's happening in our country right now, because when you look around, it seems like the country is in absolute chaos, and in many ways it is. And when I put the headline out for today's show, literally saying that America is waking up and uniting, I saw a lot of comments of people almost saying, look, Seth, like, what are you smoking? Like, America is a train wreck right now. But there's actually a lot of reasons why I say that, because if you look at the bigger picture and you look at the control mechanisms, it absolutely makes sense. And we're going to be diving into that. So, one thing to look at, so our country, the United States, and really the world, but our country specifically, which we'll be focusing on tonight, has been infiltrated and controlled for a really long time. So there's a variety of enemies, communists, globalists, bankers, etc. But we're not going to be focusing on that for today's show. So I want to first look at some of the key ways that Americans are being controlled and basically enslaved. So we have free will, and the enemies of mankind know that. So they have to get us to choose to be enslaved. And so how do they do that? Programming, right? So they have to install a program into the minds of the people. This program then hijacks their thinking, and it hijacks their free will, and it creates, what you could say is this breed of humans that unknowingly choose to be enslaved, right? So this program, whether what you can call it MK Ultra or a brainwashing system. I'm just referring it to as the program. So this program has some characteristics that we're going to talk about. So the program trusts doctors, trusts scientists, teachers, news anchors, anyone that the state deems an expert. The program trusts the governmental agencies to be their watchdog, right? CDC, FDA, right? Telling them that big pharma is safe, allowing poisonous foods to be sold to Americans and fed to their kids, right? So a lot of people in their program just trust these agencies. They say, oh, the CDC said this, or well, the FDA says it's safe, so it's probably safe. The program trusts the media, right? And when I refer to media, I'm referring to the state-run propaganda, right? So people in communist countries, they know about this. They know that, oh yeah, that's a state-run propaganda. But a lot of people that are in America that are still being controlled by this program, they trust the media, right? So they literally, they go straight to the state-run propaganda to form their worldview. And what the state-run propaganda does is it actually just reinforces the program, right? There's all kinds of, we're not going to be getting into the mechanics of brainwashing, but it's something I've studied extensively. But what you can say is that whether you look at MK Ultra or even go back into, say, Juice Merleau in the book, The Rape of the Mind, and talk about menticide, the killing of the mind and replacing it with the program, right? The media, it reinforces that program. So this program considers any ideas that conflict with the program to be harmful conspiracy theories, right? And this is actually part of the program, is that if you bring an idea to someone that their mind is still controlled by this program, and this idea is different from what the program tells them to believe. Now, whether it's the safety of the jabs, whether it's chemtrails, what's happening with the elections, this program is programmed to reject that and to say, look, that's a harmful conspiracy theory, therefore I won't even listen to it. Okay, so the program believes that elections are safe, that every vote is counted. The program accepts the entertainment given to it by the controllers, right? So the music industry, television, etc. So the program literally, you sit down and you just watch Netflix, you turn on the music, and you just accept that whatever degeneration, whatever immorality that you're seeing in front of you is just how things are, right? And this has been used. I mean, you could go back into studying cultural Marxism and you can see how this is the slow march to slowly destroy the morality in our country. But this program makes people latch onto that. It makes people latch onto the celebrities, the idol worship. Why do you think that the controllers are now having all these famous celebrities come out? Of course they do, right? They're coming out right around election time like this, and it's almost like they're being controlled. Which I think a lot of them are, because a lot of these celebrities are actually really intelligent, but who knows what's controlling them? Who knows what contracts or what blackmail is on them? So this program believes the government will always take care of them, right? Through Social Security or welfare programs or whatever. And so they're taught in this program to look at the government as the nanny, or it's the nanny state. The government's going to save us, right? And actually, in a lot of ways, the government becomes more important than God. So the program believes that any individuals that don't abide by the program's rules are dangerous and shouldn't have free speech. So people like me, or President Trump, or Alex Jones, or RFK Jr., right? These are people that are putting forth ideas and information that is different from what the program says is real. And so this program in some people's minds makes them reject it, as I mentioned, calling it a conspiracy theorist, but even saying that it's dangerous and that you shouldn't have this free speech. So the program has parents send their children to an education system that is designed by the controllers, run by the state, with a single goal, right? This is the key. The single goal of the education system that's run by the Department of the Education is to install this same program deep into the minds of the next generation, which makes it even harder to uproot, because if you can install the program at, say, 3 years old or 2 years old, you can start installing this program. That child, that poor child, their entire worldview is formed from the program. So it's very, very difficult later on in life for you to uproot that program. So the program also makes people believe that they have the moral high ground, right? This is what's in that structure, that this program dictates that their thinking is virtuous and moral. And so when they're fighting for abortions, or when they're fighting to keep the border open, right? You're familiar with the term virtue signaling, or they're bringing in, say they're running a corporation like Harley Davidson or any of these big corporations. They're bringing in DEI programs. They're bringing in programs to hire illegals or whatever it is. It's the program taking effect. But what the program does, though, is it makes them think that they have the moral high ground, right? So they're the ones that are virtuous. They're the ones that are helping the needy. And that this is one of the most sinister things, right? The old saying goes that the road to hell is paved in good intentions. And this is exactly what we're seeing. But one of the most important keys to a successful program is that the programmee, the person that has that program installed in their brain and their operating system, they believe that the thoughts generated by this program are their own thoughts. And this is the key, is they can't distinguish between their own thoughts and the thoughts and belief of the program. And this is what is most dangerous to people, because they don't understand that they're being controlled. And now I'm not saying that I'm in some group of people that completely see through the program and that I had this moral high ground. No, I accept that a lot of my thoughts and beliefs are still being dictated by this program, because I went to public schools, right? I was fed the seed oils and all the junk that they're still feeding the children. I had my, deliveries of mercury into my arm as a kid, just like a lot of other kids that grew up in my generation. I grew up listening to AC/DC, singing about Highway to Hell and all these things. So I was also indoctrinated in that program. So I'm not coming to you saying, oh, I see the program for what it is and I'm immune to it. No, I'm still almost every day working on rooting out the elements of my thinking that still align to this. And fundamentally, though I'm calling it the program, actually the most accurate way I've come to describe it is it's the specter of communism. That's what it is, right? And if you go and you look at, there's a series published by the Epoch Times, which I've talked about quite a lot here. It's a book series. You can get it on video or audio, and it's called How the Specter of Communism is Ruling This World. And it's the best explanation of this program, right? This program is some form of communism merged with Satanism, where it's taken over. It's a very, very evil program. But when you understand the depth of this programming, and you understand how much it's controlled our society and how powerful it is to allow this system to stay in power, it's like you then understand that this is why having control of the narrative is so vital for a totalitarian regime to stay in power. And this is why anyone who exposes the lies of the narrative and the lies of the program is an enemy of the state. So it's easy to understand why censorship is so critical. Like, why is it that even though right now I'm on YouTube, I'm being very careful with what I say? And now I'm not censoring myself in the topics. I'm still talking about things they don't want me to talk about. You know what I'm talking about. But the reality is that I'm so heavily censored on YouTube, which is the largest video platform in the world, that if I wasn't censored, honestly, I'd have a channel on YouTube with millions of subscribers, and I'd be reaching tens of millions of people every month. Like, that's how powerful YouTube is, and I can see it. But instead, my average video on YouTube is getting 2,000 or 3,000 views, right? Because they're making sure that the information that I'm presenting doesn't reach the masses, because it's a threat to their program. And that's the key to their control mechanism, is that they need to have enough of the masses, enough of the population in America has to be controlled by this program. And so this is why, even though they've used the internet and they've used big tech in ways of reinforcing the program, there's also been loopholes in it, because this is still America. So you have entrepreneurs that are building platforms like Rumble, which give me, just some man in America, some random guy, the ability to speak to a lot of people and to talk about these things. And what's amazing is that even though YouTube is not allowing me to reach a lot of people, I'm consistently seeing in the comments that you're telling me, Seth, you're one of the few shows I can share with my liberal children, or I can share with my local church, or whatever it is. And I do that on purpose. Like, I'm very intentional with not demonizing the left, because I don't want to feed into that divide. It's very, very purposeful for me, because I want this content to be able to break that program, right? And that program, if I come at that program and start punching the program and accusing it, it rejects that. But if we can come and we can be rational and calm and compassionate, that's what allows us to slip into the program and really change people's thinking. So I want to take a look, though, at some indicators that this program is wearing off and that more Americans are waking up and coming together. And fundamentally, I'd say that Americans are uniting. And this is, I mean, it's an amazing thing, actually, as much as COVID changed our way of life. I think COVID was one of the greatest blessings in disguise, because what it did is it took all these Americans that were actually just enjoying life in the program. It's like the guy on the Matrix that's, he's like, he wants to eat his steak. So what's happening, though, is that there's all these people that were just enjoying life, because comfort is one of the greatest tools of the program as well. It's like, hey, don't worry about these things. Don't worry about those conspiracies. Work your 9-to-5 job. You got your 401k and, your golden handcuffs, and here's your bread and your circuses. All right, here's your football games to watch on Monday nights and whatever. And so people were just enjoying that, and they weren't thinking much outside of that. But then COVID turned every single thing upside down. And so since then, there's been this mass awakening. And as we enter into the election cycle, as we enter into the, what I think is probably one of the most important elections in the history of our country, maybe even of the world, if we're looking at the trajectory of where the world heads after this time. If we look at this as we're heading into that, you can see that there's this mass acceleration of awakening. And I'm going to be talking about that, a lot of that, in today's show. So first, I want to take a look at the news engagement. So I got a few things to show you, all kinds of research to show you. So here's one thing to pull up. So this is from 2022. I have another article to pull up to show you. But back in 2022, that news engagement was plummeting already, right? So this is, they're saying that social media interactions with news articles, so people sharing news articles, had dropped 50%, right, from 2021 to 2022. Okay, cable news primetime viewers dropped 19%. News media app sessions dropped 16%. Unique visits to top 5 news sites dropped almost 20%. Now, here's another thing looking at, here's another graph. This is looking at the average total viewers per year. So you can see that back in 2014, the black line on top represents the average for ABC, CBS, and NBC. The green is CNN, orange is Fox, and purple is MSNBC. So what you can see is that there's been, since 2014, there has been a massive drop in viewership. And then what you see, though, is you come down here and you hit the 2020, there's a spike around 2020, right? Because during the election, everyone was glued. I'm sure that you probably were, right? You were glued to your TV. You're glued to the internet, seeing, okay, what's going to happen? Is the inauguration going to happen? I mean, it was a crazy time. But then since then, it's just continuing to drop. And so like CNN, for instance, they had, roughly, if I'm looking at this graph, close to 2 million average total viewers, if this is the number. I think around that. And now they've dropped down to less than 1 million. So what this tells you is that, to me, all of these organizations they mentioned, ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, these are state-run propaganda organs. Okay, I think we now know even Fox News, which I'll be showing you actually in a video I've got where RFK Jr. is talking about how big pharma is able to control the narrative on even Fox News. So all these news programs are programs, right? Isn't it funny? It's like, okay, what are you going to watch tonight? Which news program are you going to watch? It's just funny. It's just right out there in the open. It's like, which program are you going to watch? I'm going to watch the program that tells me the truth about the election. I'm going to watch the program that tells me the truth about genders. I'm going to watch the program that tells me why the right is so racist. I'm going to watch the program that tells me why the left is burning the country down. Like, it's so crazy. It's right in our faces, the programming, right? So this is just looking at news consumption. Now, another thing I want to look at here is how the pharmaceutical industries slip in public esteem. So we also have to realize that when we're looking at this control system, is that the medical system is another way that people are enslaved. because a sick populace is not a populace that has the energy to revolt against a government. Not to mention the fact that a sick population is a great customer. But the fact is that we're now seeing, and I've got another video to show today later in the show that talks about this more specifically. It's actually another little segment from RFK Jr., that we are being intentionally poisoned by these companies to make us sick, which makes us permanent customers to them. Great business model, isn't it? But what it also does at the same time is it wears down our minds. It dulls our thinking, right? The government recently came out, one of the agencies, they recently came out and they said, oh, we actually have now noticed that fluoride actually affects your IQ, that fluoride lowers your IQ. Yet you can still go get food for babies that says, hey, it's high in fluoride, which is good for you. Or they're still dumping fluoride into our public water systems, or there's so many fluoride in your toothpaste, right? So they're knowingly dumbing us down, and we could spend a whole show talking about all the different methods that they're dumbing down the American population. But the key is that when our minds aren't sharp, and that when we're dulled, we can't organize, we can't fight back against them. Okay, so here we have, news engagement plummets. We have distrust in pharma. So the other thing I talked about, though, with this was the public education system, right? So the public education system is the dream of a totalitarian government. Like if they can create a situation in a country where both parents are so stressed, they both have to work to survive because of inflation, because of the rise in the cost of everything. If both parents are now forced to work and the government comes along and says, hey, you know what? Because we're so caring with our social programs, we're going to give you free childcare. Now, a lot of parents, they're still bought into that program. They're thinking, wow, great, free childcare. That's okay. Nothing is free, though. So what are you exchanging? Well, guess what they're teaching your kid? They're teaching your 3-year-old kid that they can choose their gender. They're teaching, that this is a racist country and that was founded on the backs of racism. And, so they're teaching them, as I mentioned, they're installing the program into the children. So, but here's the cool thing is I'm going to pull up another chart for you here, which is really, really exciting to me. So check this out. This is the rise in homeschooling. So this is a Washington Post article that says homeschooling's rise from fringe to fastest growing form of education. So this is incredible to me because what this shows, and they talk about it, in this article they go over how homeschooling is more of a fringe thing. There's different reasons for people doing it. But the reality is that what this represents is a massive movement of people saying, I am no longer going to trust the public school system to raise my kid. And COVID opened a lot of this up because a lot of parents became aware of what their kids are being taught because they're overhearing these Zoom calls. And it's like, wait, this is what you're teaching my kid? All right. And then they go in there and the teacher's saying, actually, you're not supposed to be watching that for the privacy. It's like, wait, you don't want me watching what you're teaching my kid? I'm pulling my kid out of school. So this chart here is showing this massive spike in homeschooling is incredible. I'm one of these people, right? I'm going to be homeschooling my kids. We're already starting with my 3-year-old. The other day, my homeschool lesson was how to catch frogs. It was great. It was lovely. So this is happening. But at the same time, you're also seeing a rise in people that are eating healthy in America, right? So this is a look at the projections for organic food. So if you scroll on here, you can see that organic food in America, it's a blowing up industry, right? So what this tells me is that this coincides directly with that distrust in pharma, with the distrust in big food, the distrust in these agencies, because as we talked about, it was really these agencies that are the FDA and the CDC that are actually the ones that are poisoning us. The food that they're serving us, the food that they're making for our children, it's killing them. It's causing them all kinds of issues and childhood obesity and diabetes. Not to mention now we're having childhood heart attacks, childhood strokes. Like if you watch the recent interview I did with Harry Fisher, the paramedic, and what's happening to the children is frightening. But again, this is another example that America, the masses in America, are starting to reject this programming. They're seeing through it, right? But the key, though, is that the programming has its best chance of surviving right? So the controllers of the society, the whatever you want to call them, the social engineers, right? The program that they're installing in us, it has the best chance of survival when everyone is at odds with each other. And this is the key, is that they need to keep us divided and fragmented, right? Like absolutely divided, absolutely fragmented. This is why you look around, it's like, it feels like America is more divided than it's ever been because this is what they're trying to create. But also that this is another tool of the media, of the propaganda, because whether you're watching Fox News or CNN, both of those stations are reinforcing the division, right? So on one side, you have, say, Fox News, and a lot of their coverage is, look what the left is doing. Look how evil the left is. Look what they're doing. But then on the left, right, say CNN, look how evil Trump is. So what they're doing is that they're locking people into these arguments. They're locking people because when you're so focused on blaming your neighbor for the woes of the country, the reality is that you're not looking at the social engineers. You're not looking at the elites that are doing this, that are the ones that are dividing our society and funding both sides. You look at the wars we've been in. Well, yeah, guess what? The banks are funding both sides of the wars. But you know what? It's our sons and our daughters that are going to the front lines and getting killed, right? Because of this massive, scheme of theirs. So I've got a couple of videos to show you. As it relates to this, actually, I want to show you first. So there's a music video by Tom MacDonald. Now, I'm never someone who's really liked rap. Okay, maybe I had some instances in high school. I listened to it a little bit, but Tom MacDonald, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He has come out and he's completely independent. And what he's doing with his music, and this is a form of culture, right? Music is a very, very powerful tool in changing culture. But what he's doing with his music is he is exposing a lot of the same things I'm talking about. It's just that his format is different. So for me, I get on a screen like this as a news presenter or whatever you want to consider me, and I'm showing you my research and walking you through a narrative. What he's doing is he's making these 3-minute songs that completely capture a really, really significant idea. So I'm going to go ahead and play this for you. It's about 3 minutes, 45 seconds long. If you don't like rap, I apologize. You can turn it off for the next 3 minutes if you want to, but I highly recommend you give it a listen because this guy's extremely talented. And what I like a lot about his music is that he really tries to bring it above even the political divide. He sees very clearly that even the trap of left versus right is a trap, right? So I'm going to go ahead and play this for you. I'll put it up full screen. That way you can see it. Like I said, it's about 3 minutes long. There's no swearing in it. I don't think so. So it's clean. It's not explicit lyrics, but listen to the words here and look what he's presenting here, because honestly, like what he's showing in this is one of the greatest falsehoods that has been put into our country. One of the greatest tools is dividing us and making us think that it's the left's problem or it's the right's problem, when actually the key is that if we can realize that we're actually way more similar than we are different and come together and say, actually, no, these are the people that are causing all the problems. That's what the elites fear most. So I'm going to go and play this for you. Like I said, it's about 3 minutes, 45 seconds.
I'm the one that you hate for making America great. And I'm the one who's trying to build back better. We ain't the same. Yeah, you're right. There's a difference. Y'all are woke and we're awake. What a joke. Does white privilege have something to say? Your president drove the country into the ground. The crime rate is through the roof. There ain't no jobs to be found. Inflation going up. My kids need food in their mouths. You put the fake news on every TV screen in my house. Hold up. Your president a racist, homophobic. Tried to overthrow democracy and everybody knows it. He will never make America great again like the slogan. He a white supremacist. Just like all of you who voted. That is not facts. All you woke morons do is talk trash. Drag queens in classrooms hate anyone who's not black. You're pro-white, you know that's what the Klan members are, right? You're anti-LGBTQ, then why they always on your mind? Bro, you're a boy, you're a girl, stop playing stupid. You screwing up the youth and all the children are our future. You don't care about the kids, look at all the school shootings. You're pro-gun, it's your fault, stop making those excuses. You think anyone who don't agree with you is just a bigot. You're a fascist, you're a Nazi. You just mad because you triggered. You're just jealous of the left because we're progressive and we're winning. Now I'm tripping that you won the election because you rigged it. They put you on the left, they put you on the right. They tell you what to hate, then they tell you who to fight. Till you're screaming, screaming. They put you on the right, they put you on the left. They tell you who to hate, they do anything to get you screaming, screaming. My president president, draining the swamp, we building walls. Your president opened the border for one and all. Now there's murderers and criminals evading the law. Walking right into America, our safety is gone. Well, my president ended pandemic, saved the economy, and introduced legislation fighting for our equality. His son smokes crack. I don't care about that, honestly. He's raising all our wages. He can't raise his children properly. You obviously pro-life. A woman's choice is your right. I feel like abortion is important and you don't like. You're treating it like birth control. You're treating them like your wife. I said that all lives matter and I also meant unborn life. You're so clever. Go ahead, make your little memes while we're bringing home the soldiers who were in the Middle East. Okay, you brought the soldiers home, but then you burnt the flag and took a knee and left the men who fought for all our freedom homeless on the street. Build back better. There'll be violence and riots until you Bible thumpers learn to fall in line and trust the science. We ain't ever backing down from all you pedos and tyrants. The right is fighting the system, the left designed to divide us. And that is clown talk. All you got is mean tweets. It's free speech. Call the cops. Dog, you defunded the police. This country will be better off without all you freaks. This is America, homie. If you don't like it, you can leave. They put you on the left, they put you on the right. They tell you what to hate, then they tell you who to fight. Till you're screaming, screaming. They put you on the right, they put you on the left. They tell you who to hate, they do anything to get you screaming, screaming. No president will ever give a damn about the truth. It don't matter who's the winner, cause the people always lose. No president will ever break the system from inside. It's a deep state plan dividing us into sides. It don't matter if you're left, right, black, white, red, blue, conservative or liberal, rich, poor, me, you, Republican or Democrat, old, young, mean, cool. They promise us our freedom, but then all we get is free doom. They put you on the left, they put you on the right. They tell you what to hate, then they tell you who to fight. Till you're screaming, screaming. They put you on the right, they put you on the left. They tell you who to hate, they do anything to get you screaming, screaming.
Yeah, so there's Mr. Tom McDonald for you. I mean, love him or hate him, his messaging is really important. He's someone I've been trying to interview for a really long time. I think I finally might. I have a connection now that knows him pretty well, so I'm trying to get him on, but he doesn't really do much interviews. So let's just hope for that, because I'd love to sit down with that guy and just pick his brain. So I've got another video to show you. So there's a guy named Shahid Bolson. Now, I don't know much about him. I did a little research, and he seems like he's maybe extreme in some of his views. But there's a video that I came across that was came out a couple of days ago that I think absolutely nails it in talking about the division in America, but also talking about the rigging of elections. So I'll play this video for you. Let's see, here it is. He calls it the election ritual, the illusion of American democracy. So I'll play, it's like a 12-minute video. I'm going to play maybe about 4 minutes for you, because he brings up some really, really important points about elections and the role of America. Now, he's obviously someone, as you see, there's a lot of people around the world that they're very anti-America. And there's good cause for that, because the American deep state has certainly caused trouble all over the world. So I'm saying he definitely has that bent, but what he's saying, though, I can't disagree with it. So I'll play this for you, folks. This one's going to be, like I said, about 4 minutes or so that I'm going to play for you.
I mean, divided in so many ways. It isn't just that the divides are deep, it's that the divides are so many. Black and white, race against race, advocates of this issue against opponents of this issue, even men against women and women against men. There isn't a single category within that society that doesn't have some corresponding nemesis. It's just divide and conquer, playing out domestically. And Democrats and Republicans is just another one of these divisions, because the country has been conquered by corporate economic imperialists. Look, I don't care who you vote for in November, because power doesn't care who you vote for in November. I've said it before. If you imagine that unelected power of the private sector is going to entrust the public with deciding how things are going to be run and who's going to run things, then you're living in a fantasy. It's absurd. America has subverted, sabotaged, and strangled democracies all around the world. They've been interfering with, tampering with, rigging elections across the globe for decades, from Haiti to Honduras, from Italy to Iran, from Syria to South Africa. They've toppled governments, assassinated elected officials, fixed elections, bribed and bullied and bulldozed democracies on every continent for a century. They don't think that any population in any country in the world can be trusted to elect leaders who will safeguard the interests of the American elite. So what makes you think that they're going to trust you with that power? They rig elections and install whoever they want in country after country, but somehow you think that they're not going to do that in your country. Why, how naive can you be? Listen, the election cycle in America is nothing but a mechanism for what you can call the campaign industrial complex, whereby billions upon billions of dollars of contributions, your money, are funneled into the private sector. I mean, when you donate to a politician or you donate to a candidate, where do you think that money goes? It goes directly to business. You're not doing anything but increase the revenue streams of consultancies, ad agencies, analytics firms, PR firms, media companies, social media companies, digital marketing agencies, events coordinators, on and on. This is nothing but the public providing basically an economic stimulus package to unproductive industries. It's a wealth transfer that you yourselves are participating in. You're literally just donating money to the private sector and getting nothing in return. Getting nothing in return except that you get to watch the most expensive fan fiction movie about democracy ever produced. I mean, look at the Democrats. Kamala Harris was just appointed as the nominee. She wasn't voted for. This is straight up succession, not election. There were no primaries. She hasn't had to outline her policy platform, and no one needs her to do that. All she has to do is to not be Donald Trump. This is the logic of demonization versus policy debate as a campaign strategy. No candidate has to win your approval as long as the whole election is framed in the lesser of two evils scenario. And what's the point of that? To make the pre-programmed win seem plausible, that's all. And to not leave any opening for dissent to manifest that might make the win seem implausible. Because, for instance, if voters actually have demands of this candidate or that candidate, and the candidate fails to address those demands, then it could cast doubt upon their eventual victory. And inevitably, if a candidate does address voter demands, well, that will always end up alienating some other faction of voters. So we don't talk about issues. We don't talk about how to deal with issues. We just rally behind our party's candidate in lockstep because the other party's candidate is literally the devil incarnate. When you're operating in the lesser of two evils framework, you're always going to have decidedly low expectations of your chosen candidate, and that's perfect when the election is already fraudulent in the first place. So this uncomplicates the rigging process. Yes, I said rigging, and don't think for a second, don't you imagine that that's a conspiracy theory, that the U.S. rigs elections. But between 1946 and 2000, America is documented to have interfered with, tampered with, malignly influenced or outright rigged at least 88 elections from Europe to Latin America to Asia to Africa. So again, if you think that they'll do this everywhere else, but your so-called democracy is pristine, I would have to ask you why you think so. Why would it be more important to the power structure to control the outcome of an election in, say, Guyana than it would be for them to control the outcome of an election in the United States of America?
There's a point to end on, right? I mean, it is a good point, right? That we know our government, and you know, I say our government, the deep state, the CIA, these agencies, that they have done so many color revolutions and coups and political assassinations. If you've never read, Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins, I've actually interviewed the guy. I highly recommend it because it details exactly how the United States uses debt slavery and the economic hitman model and the CIA jackals to overthrow countries. And that's just one part of it. We're not getting into color revolutions. And it's a good point, though. It's like, yeah, if they're not going to let you choose the leader in Guyana, what makes you think you can in America? And so while I do agree with that from a lot of places, I agree with that. But America is also a very different country. And we're, for one, we have the largest standing army on earth, right? So if you look in the history of totalitarian regimes, they've never been able to successfully overthrow a country and bring in a communist or totalitarian system. They've never been able to do it when the populace was armed. Now, America is not just armed, they're armed to the teeth. Like if you look at the graphs and the charts of gun ownership per person around the world. You look at it in America, it's like, well, these guys in America take their guns real seriously because we understand the role of this. So I think that the key, though, this goes back to whatever is happening with the election. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, right? Because obviously it matters a lot. But what's most important is the people themselves waking up. Like, that's what's most important, is that if enough people in America break out of the programming, then they won't be able to pull off what they did in 2020 because they're going to have resistance. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, that I really believe that if you look at what happened in 2020, November 2020, you look at the brazen theft that happened, I honestly believe the number one reason they were able to do it is because they controlled the narrative so tightly in America. That at that time, you look at that chart I showed you, viewership was at an all-time high for places like CNN, even Fox News. So people were still trusting and turning to the mainstream media. It's like they were in a country where a coup just happened, okay? And they were going to the state-run propaganda organs, the state-run propaganda TV stations, to actually see if there was really a coup, right? How funny is it to think about that, right? There was a coup, and they're hearing these whisperings of, hey, this was stolen, and what about those ballot dumps, the lost thumb drives and the water pipes that were broken, and they're hearing these whisperings that, hey, folks, something wasn't right. But then they turn on the TV and they watch the state-run propaganda that says this was the most secure election in the history of elections, and right, so they were controlled by that, and that's why they were allowed to get away with it. But I honestly think that heading into 2024, I mean, for one, if you look at how many people are now seeing the reality of what our country is like under the current leadership, but I think that people are waking up to it, and so I just think they're going to have a really hard time, because they don't have the control of the narrative like they did in 2020. So not to say they won't try something absolutely brazen and insane, but the thing is that the people are just waking up now. And especially if you look at what's happened with Kennedy and Trump, it's really significant, because you had this division, which typically they give you two choices. It's A or B, right? And this goes back to Edward Bernays and propaganda, right? It's the whole idea that you give basically the public is not intelligent enough to make their own decisions. So what you do is the elites, the controllers, the social engineers, they boil down all the decisions into two choices, and that's their job. I mean, Edward Bernays details this in his books, and so their job is to give you A or B. But now you have Kennedy coming in with this C, which is really significant. There's all these people that are like, I don't really like A or B, and why am I forced to always choose from A or B? And this guy's got massive following. He's got a Kennedy name. And so he polls this separate audience that doesn't trust either of the parties, which is really, really good. Okay, these people are going to him because he's the outsider. But then with him coming over to Trump, it's almost like it's a master chess move if you're looking at how to move around the population. But what's also happening, and this is actually really interesting, because if you look at the organizations that are controlling a lot of what happens in America, a lot of it actually comes down to big pharma and big food, right? These are the agencies that, it's the incestuous relationship between the FDA, the CDC, and these big corporations. I'm sure you've seen the graphics. They'll say, oh, hey, this guy was the CEO of Johnson & Johnson. This guy was the CEO of Pfizer. And, oh, wow, now he's the chairman of the FDA. I mean, it's such an incestuous relationship. There should be so many bans on this, because if you look at why America is the sickest nation on earth, it's this. It's because you have these giant multinational corporations that have seized control of the government agencies that are supposed to be protecting us from these kinds of these giant corporations. And so they're actually bending the rules, and they're feeding the Americans poison, and they're injecting them with poison so that we stay perpetually sick. And this is the cornerstone of what Kennedy is bringing in here. And what's amazing, look at this, his whole slogan of "Make America Healthy Again," right? You could argue, say, "Make America Great Again." You could say, well, great is it's about the patriarchy and all this, but especially to the liberals, "Make America Healthy Again." I mean, who's going to argue about that? I mean, the funny thing is like this is one of the ways I get along really well with people that are much more liberal in their thinking, is that they believe in organic gardening. That they're all about like local farm markets and farm to table. And a lot of them that I know, I've got a lot of friends that have different political views than me, and it's fine. I love it. But like they're like so focused on health and environment. So here you have Kennedy coming in, who is a career environmental lawyer. He's a guy that is spent a lot of his life going up against these agencies. And he's now one of the most significant people that has joined the Trump team. But what he's now showing and what he's exposing is massive. Like the control mechanism, the program we talked about, how it ties into big food and big pharma. He's on this war path, and he's just exposing all these lies. But what's also really important is that there's now this message of unity. And this is what's really, really key with this, is that I feel like that what's happening, and I'll show you this commercial that Kennedy recently released, RFK Jr. recently released, is that they're talking about what America is. And America is the place where all the different races and religions can come together. All right, and we have these common rights that are given to us by God and reinforced through the Constitution and Declaration of Independence. And we have this foundation of this country that values this individualism, and it's been butchered, and we've been turned into this left versus right machine. But what we see, like, I'm going to show you this commercial because it's so profound what Kennedy is doing here. So I'll pull this up for you. Here, just I'm gonna play it full screen. It's a minute long, a minute 15 seconds long. But this is something that earlier when I watched this, it brought me to tears, and maybe it will again. We'll see. You'll know instantly.
Do you know what this wonderful country is made of? It's made up of 100 different kind of people, and 100 different ways of talking, and 100 different ways of going to church. But they're all American ways. Wouldn't we be silly if we went around hating people because they comb their hair different than ours?
But we can perhaps remember, if only for a time, that those who live with us are our brothers, and surely we can begin to work a little harder to bind up the wounds among us and to become in our hearts brothers and countrymen once again.
Again, at a very similar crossroads, we have a unique opportunity not only to diffuse those tensions, but to take a radically different path. It starts by seeing within others and within ourselves that which is not selfish, but is brave and generous and idealistic and has good intentions.
Think about that, fellas. You as your good American heads. Don't let anybody make suckers out of you. Well, gotta go to work.
So I mean, what a message to be putting out there. This message that we, and what Kenny said towards the very end, is that we have this very unique opportunity right now. And I really believe that. I really believe that we have a unique opportunity in this country to come together, to extend an olive branch, to try to help and communicate. And what's amazing though is that I'm seeing it happening. Like I'm seeing, if you go onto Twitter, you can see all these different people that said, look, like I used to mock MAGA and I hated Trump and I hated Trump supporters, but I was a Kennedy supporter. And now once I come over, I realize that they're actually really friendly people. And so we're seeing it, that we're at this crossroads in our country where we can come together and we can form a much more united America. Now, there's always going to be the fringes, right? There's people that aren't going to fit into that, and that's okay, right? But that's not what matters. What matters is that the vast majority of Americans can come together and agree on what's important to us. Now, what's interesting is looking at Kennedy, the fact that I mentioned he's an environmental lawyer. He understands, he's been fighting for health and all this stuff, which is really, really key. But what he's doing here is that he's the talking points that he's bringing up. In a lot of ways, these are the talking points that a lot of the left has been making, yet he's merged them into this platform, this unity party that it's about all Americans, and it's actually deeply spiritual too. So I've got a video here I'm going to play for you next. This is him on Tucker Carlson, and it's about at minute 43. Actually, I'm going to do this one full screen for you because it's just it's just really good. I'm going to just get this ready for you real quick. So, okay. So,
We have
So I'll do this full screen, as I said, because this is really good. It's a minute 43, and this is, so we recently did an interview with Tucker Carlson, and this is this really special part where he's talking about the role of nature and how it connects us to God, and this is really important. So I'll play this for you now, and then I'll be back after that.
Highest chronic disease burden of any country in the world, and it's destroying us. It's $4.3 trillion a year. It's costing our country 5 times the military budget.
Oh, sorry, wrong video. This is the, here we go. This is the video. Sorry, it's 2 minutes and 56 seconds here.
It's so weird to me because the Democrats have become subsumed in this carbon orthodoxy. And you and I have talked about this. What that's done is it's forced them to do something that you should never do if you're an environmentalist, which is to commoditize and quantify everything. So everything is measured by its carbon footprint, how many tons of carbon it produces. And the reason that we protect the environment is just the opposite of that. The reason that we protect the environment is because there's a spiritual connection. There's there's a love that we have. It's not about quantifying stuff. That's what the devil does. He quantifies everything, right? And that is, what he wants us doing. Put a number on it. And the reason we're preserving these things is because we love our children. God talks to human beings through many vectors, through each other, through organized religion, through the great prophets, through the wise people, the great books of those religions. But nowhere with the kind of detail and texture and grace and joy as through creation. And when we destroy nature, we diminish our capacity to sense the divine, understand who God is and what our own potential is and duties are as human beings. And that...
I hope what you just said, by the way, is chopped up and put all over every social media platform in the world. When we destroy nature, we degrade our own ability to experience the divine.
It connects us to those 10,000 generations of human beings that were here before there were laptops. The central revelation of every one of those religions always occurred in the wilderness. Muhammad who was a city boy from Mecca, had to go to the wilderness of Mount Hera. Buddha had to go into the wilderness, and wander for years and then sit under the Bodhigaya tree to get his first revelation of nirvana. Christ had to spend 40 days in the wilderness to discover his divinity for the first time. And his mentor was John the Baptist, who lived in a cave in the Jordan Valley and ate honey of wild bees and locusts. And, all of Christ's parables come from nature. I'm the vine, you are the branches, the mustard seed, the little swallows, the scattering the seeds on the fallow ground. Because that is where we sense the divine. God talks to us through the fishes, the birds, the leaves. They're all, words from our Creator. And that is why we preserve nature.
Yes.
It's not because of the quantity of carbon. And by the way,
I feel what you said so deeply, I can hardly even express it. And thank you for saying that.
The best thing that you can do for climate is to restore the soils. The soils are the solution to everything. The soil will absorb all that carbon, and it'll absorb the water. It'll stop the flooding. It'll give us healthy food. And that's what our national policy has to be.
So if you listen to what he said there, about how nature is what connects us to God, I couldn't agree more. I remember as a kid, actually, even still to this day, my mom, we'd be walking and she would always do this, right? She'd always pick up this little flower. She'd see this beautiful little flower growing, or she'd see a little baby bird, and she'd hold this flower in her hand. She goes, "Seth, how can you look at this and not believe in God? How can you not believe that there is a God that created this beautiful thing that you're holding?" Or say she'd pick a piece of fruit or a vegetable or a strawberry. It's like, how can you not believe in God? And that's really true. It's really true. And it's funny because I think that, for a long time I looked at RFK and said, okay, he's one of the environmentalist guys. And I think that for a lot of people on the right, they look down on the environmental movement because we know that it has been hijacked. And China in particular has hijacked a lot of the environmental movement as a way of bringing in tyranny around the world through, the ESG stuff, et cetera. It's been a great tool for controlling people and for, controlling farmers, et cetera. But if you look at what RFK is saying there, even talk about soil health. I mean, I care a lot about the environment. Like, I care more about the environment than I have in my entire life. Like, when I go outside and see the chemtrails in the sky, it's like, I care about the environment, which I'm glad that if you saw my most recent show on RFK, I talked about how that he's now vowing basically to end the crime of chemtrails, which is great. I mean, imagine if there's no more chemtrails in America. I'd be like the happiest guy ever. But I care a lot about the environment. And what's interesting is that it's like, what Kennedy, he's playing a very unique role being in between the two parties, because a lot of people that were on the left that loved the Kennedys and respected RFK Jr. are now seeing him talking about the policies that typically were only talked about on the right. But the same thing is happening on the other side, is that you have people that are on the right that are now listening to RFK Jr. and they're talking about cleaning up the environment and everything, but he's not talking about, hey, we need to bring in more social justice and more ESG scores and everything. He's talking about, like, hey, like, let's fix our soil, let's stop chemtrailing, let's stop poisoning people with our food. These are all things I can get behind. But the crazy thing is that with the business of people being sick, like him exposing the big pharma is huge, right? Because if you look at how much control big pharma has over DC, over the media, over the food agencies, over the FDA, it's absolutely insane. And the only conclusion I've come to, aside from maybe getting into, say, Deagle report, depopulation stuff, which is probably for a different show, is that a sick person is a customer. Healthy people aren't customers. I'm like a terrible customer for big pharma because I don't take pharmaceuticals. Like, I'm a healthy guy, right? If I don't feel well, I'm going to herbs or essential oils or anything like that. I'm not rushing off to go to the doctor and get prescribed something. But if you look at this, and it's not just me though, I showed you that really post-COVID and post the rollout of this jab that everyone really is seeing through now. They're actually, if they're not seeing it from finding people on Twitter, they're seeing their own friends and family suffering because of it. People are losing trust in big pharma, which is great, because you look at the stranglehold that it has on us, you can see why it's not a good thing. But I'm going to play here another video. This is the video I accidentally played at first. This is with RFK Jr. and Dr. Phil. So this one's about 1:43, but this is him talking about the role of big pharma and how they control the media and everything. So this is a really key video. And it's actually great because all these clips with RFK, if you've been trying to share this kind of information with your friends and family and you've gotten pushback, I mean, he's a great person. Send him an RFK Jr. video and say, what do you think about this? Like, is this guy crazy or is he making sense? Because he makes a lot of sense. But why? Because he's telling the truth. And that's the thing, is that people inherently, that their gut can recognize the truth. So I'm going to play this video. It is, like I said, about 1:43. And this is RFK Jr. sitting down with Dr. Phil.
We have the highest chronic disease burden of any country in the world, and it's destroying us. It's $4.3 trillion a year. It's costing our country 5 times the military budget. When my uncle was president, the medical expenditures on chronic disease were zero. Today, it's 95% of our healthcare expenditures. It's sinking our country. And we're getting sicker and sicker. We're paying twice what Europeans do for healthcare. We have the worst healthcare outcomes in the world. It's all because we're being mass poisoned by processed foods, by pesticides, by chemicals, and by pharmaceutical drugs. And there's a series of industries that actually make money by keeping us sick. It's not just industries, but it's the med schools, the hospitals, the insurance companies you would think would want us healthy, but they actually make more money if we get sicker. And then, of course, the pharmaceutical companies, if you have a chronic disease, you're a lifetime patient. This drug, Ozempic, costs $1,500 for a week. And there's now a bill before Congress that would force the insurance companies, Medicare, to pay for it for every American who's obese. Well, that's 74% of our population.
Right.
That's going to be $3 trillion a year. And for a tiny fraction of that, you could give every American 3 meals a day of organic food, and diabetes would disappear overnight. Diabetes is treatable with food, right, with exercise, and obesity is.
Is that crazy that there's this bill that's out right now that's saying that to basically give any American that needs it Ozempic, which if you've watched my interviews with Dr. Brian Ardis, we talk a lot about Ozempic and the fact that it's Gila monster venom and how there's like terrible, terrible side effects from it. So if you haven't watched that, go watch that. I also think I have a clip on my Rumble channel about that as well. So you can see there's like a 5-minute clip talking about that. But it's crazy though. I mean, how people are saying that. We're saying, look, why not take all this money away from the big pharma and instead put it into giving Americans 3 meals of organic food every day? It's like, wow, right? Like not only are you taking funding away from big pharma, but you're also getting people healthy through organic food. I mean, so you can see that like what he's talking about is absolutely critical. But what's crazy though is that we're seeing this divide that used to be there. And it still is there, right? And the media wants to make you think that this divide is massive, but I actually don't think it is. And I'm paying attention to this too. So like I said before, I've got a lot of friends and family that are liberal, and it's fine. I love them. They're my friends, they're my family. But what's interesting though is that I'm seeing more of them come to me and they're saying, you know what, Seth, like whether they're saying it directly or they're saying it through how they're talking to me, they're basically saying, hey, what you were telling me about a couple of years ago, I kind of agree with you now. Even though I didn't agree then, I agree with you now. So I'm seeing it in my own life that people are coming together, and they're not coming to me and saying, I'm a big Trump fan now. They're coming and saying, look, I think I actually agree that it seems like there's these really evil people that are trying to kill a lot of Americans. It's the only way I can make sense of it. And so it creates these great conversations. I'm like, yes, okay, let's have a conversation. But it's also happening on Twitter. You can see the same conversation happening all over on Twitter, is because people are realizing that like we're the victims. Like we're the victims. And so there's another video I'm going to play for you. And this is a sad video. It is. So this is shared by Wall Street Apes. I guess it was posted somewhere else. He says, this post has 1.4 million likes. It's this woman. He's saying that there's something very wrong in America and no one is talking about it. The massive engagement on this post shows that millions of people want this to change right now. And this is it, right? So I talked about COVID and it being a blessing in disguise. I know that you know there's a lot of people that their lives have been full of suffering since that. And I'm not saying that that's a blessing. But what I'm saying, though, is that it's showing people the reality of what's happening in our country and the reality of the controllers of this country. And how basically, you know, people, whether they're veterans or they're homeless here in America, they're people, they're being cast aside for illegal immigrants, or being, you know, really kind of demonized. But I want to watch this because there's this woman speaking, and this is somebody that you would have maybe looked at and not agreed with, you know, a couple of years ago. But when I hear this woman speaking, like my heart goes out to her. Like this is she's an American. I don't care what her political beliefs are. Like you should not have to live like this in America. So I'm gonna play this video for you. I'd love to see what your thoughts are. So it's 1:58. I don't think she says any bad words. Maybe one bad word, but I don't think so. Just to give you a little bit of warning.
There's something wrong in this country telling people it is okay to work 3 jobs, not see your kids, not see your loved ones, not take a vacation, and God forbid you get sick, okay? And I still got a job at home because I'm a mother. Because let's not forget, I don't get a day off. And I got to figure all that out. How are we going to eat? How are we going to pay rent? How are we going to pay the utility bills? That every single thing went up after COVID. Not one thing stayed the same. And neither party ever talks about what is really going on in this world. Because I'm not even going to say the country. What is really going on in this world? There is no scarcity. It is, how do we pit people against each other so they're too distracted to see everything that I'm too addicted to consuming, and how much profit I'm making, and more profit, how many more houses one individual can have, how many yachts can one individual have, and you're gonna arrest me now that I make a tent city? Yeah. So if I take the scraps from the trash and make some kind of shelter for me and my children, whatever, I am a human being first. With what conscience are you criminalizing poverty? Right. And it's not going to stop just in the United States. The poor of the world, not just this country, are fed up. And let's not leave out rural communities. I live in Haines City, Polk County, Florida, okay? But do you think that the poor in rural communities have transportation? They don't. There's absolutely not even a sidewalk to walk on, because I am giving the message of stay poor, stay hidden, and die silently, okay? If I get a job, how do I get to that job? If I even get it when I'm in a rural community, Okay? Let's not leave those folks behind. There are hundreds of thousands of people living in trailers across the United States who are paying $1,600 a month in rent for a trailer. A trailer. Can you afford $1,600 to be living in a trailer? How many jobs do you need to have? Because I personally have 2. I have seasonal jobs and I have other jobs, part-time jobs that I do. I have a girlfriend who works 3 jobs to live in a trailer.
Gosh, my heart goes out to that woman, and it's just funny because I feel like, I was born into the middle class, and I've always stayed in the middle class, right? And I've always been an entrepreneur. I've had some businesses that were, maybe a little bit successful and some that weren't at all. But I've got by. I mean, I own a home, and the bank owns a home and I'm paying it off. But like, I've never experienced that. I have friends that did, but my heart goes out to that woman. And that's a lot of America. Right, that's a lot of America, and maybe these are people that voted for Biden, right? Maybe these are people that thought, like, maybe he can bring in some change, and they wanted more social programs. But it's like the opposite's happening, and they're being forgotten, and all the money is going to these illegals coming in. That they're building them these beautiful cities, and they're these buildings and high-rise buildings, and it's like our own veterans, our own Americans are just being cast aside. And, folks like her, they're living in trailers and they can't even afford. It's like, what do? Right? Like, what do you do if you're working 2 jobs and you can't afford to even pay your rent for a trailer? Then maybe you live in your car next, and maybe then you can't afford your car anymore, so you end up on the streets. It's the same thing that's happening to a lot of our veterans. They're just being cast aside. And this is so more people are seeing this. And I think the American people are coming together. They're absolutely coming together. And what's also amazing is that communism is now an openly discussed topic here in America. Like, I remember, back in, I think it was in 2005, 2006, I started getting involved in different human rights stuff as it relates to communism, especially. And so, like, I'd be out back in 2005, 2006 on the streets of Columbus, Ohio, passing out pamphlets exposing organ harvesting in China, exposing like the CCP and the horrors of communism. And I can tell you that most Americans, they just didn't even care. Like, if you talk about the threat of communism, the threat of China, they'd be like, well, this is like McCarthyism or something. But now, like, the discussion of communism is mainstream. Right? It's so out in the open, which is so good because it can't hide anymore. So that program, right? The program we talked about, this specter of communism that has hooked itself into the minds of so many people. It doesn't want you to expose communism, and this is why talking about communism in a lot of ways it becomes a master key to unlock people's minds. You help them understand communism. You talk to them about the horrors of communism. You make the parallels of today's society, and people are like, oh wow, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Like, I'm really scared. Like, I don't want communism in America. Like, I don't want that. And so it's actually really, really powerful. And actually, so I do have a quick video from China. And one thing I'm going to start doing in these shows where I'm doing these live news shows is that I'm going to start creating little segments, right? We'll be talking about positive things like with the upside or, finance, et cetera. But one thing I want to talk about is China. So I'm going to start making China, even if it's a little snippet of something, because I think it's really important for us to pay attention to what's happening over in China and under the CCP. But there's something, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but of the China's gutter oil. Right. So what this means, and this is for someone who thinks that communism might be okay, show them this video. So what happens in China, and I've been to China, I spent a lot of my time over in Hong Kong, and also went to southern China a lot, or at least a handful of times, and spent a lot of time in Taiwan as well. But so in China, what happens is that the street vendors, right, they have all these street vendors frying up things. After their oil is no good anymore, they dump it into the gutter. Right. So they literally, imagine this, like they take this oil from frying up their food, this nasty oil, because it's already bad oil anyway, and they just dump it into into the sewage drain. But what happens, though, is that there's entire businesses built on actually harvesting the oil that's dumped into the sewer, refining it down and selling it back to restaurants. So I've got a video to show you of this because it's almost hard to believe if you don't see it. So this is from Inconvenient Truth by Jennifer Zhang, great person to follow. But this is happening right now. So it's a 24-second video, but check this out. This is literally someone harvesting oil from the sewer, right? Where there's also feces and urine and who knows what else. They're harvesting this oil to refine down and sell back to restaurants. Like, this is what communism does to people. Watch this.
是的，是没见过这种油。
在做生物改油，天然气。
是吗？
那哪里做人吃？我敢光明正大的搞嘛。
哈，我以为是人吃的。好多哦。
买多少呢？没有了。
好的。是的，是没见过这种油。
Yeah, so that's literally like a common thing happening under communism. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, it's going on over there. So I've got one thing, as I mentioned, I'm trying to work in different segments, and one thing I always want to try to do is end on a positive note. And sometimes I have a positive video that makes you smile, but today I've got a positive tweet for you to share. So the last thing we're going to look at today is this tweet right here. So this is from Giga-based Dad, who shared this. It says, "You will never read a more beautiful social media post in your life." So this guy Jimmy said, "Today I operated on a little girl. She needed O blood. We didn't have any, but her twin brother has type O blood. I explained to him that it was a matter of life and death. He sat quietly for a moment and then said goodbye to his parents. I didn't think anything of it until after we took his blood, and he asked, 'So when will I die?' He thought he was giving her life for hers. Thankfully, they'll both be fine." It's like, if that, the innocence of that sacrifice for a child who's thinking that he's going to die by giving his blood to his sister, but he still goes through with it. Like, that's what it means to be human. And like, us being human is the greatest threat to these elites. It's us going back to what it means to be human. It's embracing human culture. It's embracing the way of life that I believe that God gave us and that was taught to us. Like, this is how human beings live. And that right there is just beautiful. Like, the amount of sacrifice that this little kid would be willing to give up his life for his sister like that. It's amazing. I think it's so important. So, okay. So folks, as we're rounding out tonight's show, just a quick reminder to make sure that you hit that follow button on Rumble if you're watching on Rumble. Also, if you like the show, even if you don't like it, actually, leave a note in the comments. I read every comment. I don't always respond to them. I apologize, but I get busy sometimes. I've got a 6-month-old baby and a 3-year-old, which are like driving me mad half the time in the most wonderful way possible. But I love reading your comments. And if you really want to help me out, then share this content. That's the best thing you can do, is to send it to a friend, send it to an email list, whatever it is, because the censorship really does affect the amount of people I can reach. And I want like this kind of information. Hopefully you agree, but I believe this kind of information is really important to get out there, because I think it helps break the matrix. It breaks the program. That's what it is. Like, this show is a deprogramming program. That's what it is, right? Man in America is a program that will deprogram you from the program. So there you go. Also, as we're finishing up, I've got one more sponsor I have to be able to mention to you, because it's fantastic, which is Balance of Nature. So Balance of Nature, great company. What they do, though, is they take your fruits and veggies and they freeze dry them and they put them in these little capsules. So say you're really busy and you don't have time to eat your fruits and veggies, you take a little capsule and it gives you a lot of those nutrients. Now, obviously, it's not the same as like eating a giant plate of fresh fruit and vegetables, but how many of us always have time to do that? So it's great for that, but it's also, I look at it as a prepping food. I look at it as something that I've got to box this stuff in the corner of the basement because it has a super long shelf life. And if there's some sort of, kind of the fan situation where you're low on food or whatever, especially low on nutrients, having these little capsules full of fruits and veggies, they're going to be worth their weight in silver, maybe even gold. So anyway, check them out. Go to balanceofnature.com or you call 1-800-246-8751. So 1-800-246-8751. And if you use promo code Seth, you get like a massive discount on the product there. So again, balanceofnature.com or 1-800-246-8751. And also just one other note about Noble Gold again. If say you're on the fence, considering putting some of your money, I wouldn't say do all of it, right? You want to kind of diversify, and if you haven't bought food and that kind of stuff first, it's really important. But if you want this as like more of an insurance policy, that hey, in case stuff gets really bad, I've got some of my assets preserved, that's my approach with it, gold and silver. no company I'd recommend more than Noble Gold Investments. So go to goldwithseth.com or 626-654-1906. All right, folks, it has been wonderful. It's lovely seeing you all tonight. I love seeing how active the chat is on Rumble. Like, it makes me so happy to see that everyone comes here. And I'm working on getting to the schedule as I talked to you about this Monday through Friday, every night at 10 p.m. This week, I might just do an interview on Friday still, and then next week probably back to the proper schedule. This depends. We have family coming in for the long weekend. So anyway, I thank you so much for being here with me today. I feel so blessed to have the opportunity to speak to you all. And I just appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for being part of Man in America. Thank you for every time you share or leave a comment or give a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. So take care, everyone. God bless. Have a wonderful, wonderful night.